see, is from Luca to Luca, and the next speaker is Lucas. So if you're not a Luca, you're not in the right place. Good afternoon also on my side to the Take a Break 2016. I've been following the auto industry for the last 37 years, and it's all but easy because the more you learn, the less you understand. I think that now we have to take a very long breath. Why? In the next 10 years, the auto industry will change more than it has in the last century. You read this very often, and we journalists sometimes tend to exaggerate in our views. But this comment to me is on spot because I think that we are on the verge of monumental changes. Transportation is evolving and new mobility providers are emerging. That means that many of today's dominant automakers and suppliers could face trouble. I don't want to steal much time to the distinguished speakers that will follow me with great presentation, so I just wanted to outline 7 things because 7 is my favorite numbers that to me are worth your attention. And number 1 is the time. The last Take a Break was 4 years ago, which in today's automotive industry looks like a previous geological era. 4 years ago, Apple was launching the second generation of the last device that really changed our world, the iPad. Google was confident that its Chrome operating system was going to replace Windows and the Apple iOS becoming not only the best operating system, but also the one that is free and so cheaper for us. These two technology giants were playing their sandbox, and no one thought they were going to play and come in the automotive sector. Number 2, about 4 years ago, Volvo has launched a slogan that looked fascinating. By 2020, no one driving a Volvo would be killed in an accident. The message was strong in pressing, but was unconvincing because Volvo was refraining from delivering the key message, autonomous driving. Last week, a fleet of autonomous taxis using Ford Fusion, which are the American version of the Mondeo in Europe, started operation in Pittsburgh, run by Ford, no way, run by Uber. Who was Uber 4 years ago when we had the last Take a Break? Well, Uber was an unknown, innovative startup that has a taxi system based on an app in San Francisco, and now is running the first experiment of autonomous driving vehicles. Number 3, if you like a nice English expression that is to overpromise and underdeliver, the global auto industry collectively has just done that with battery-powered cars, the EVs. Since la Jamais Content, the Never Satisfied, which was the first car to exceed 100 km per hour, either on April 29 or on May 1, 1899, the EVs were about to conquer the world, but they never did. And so far, which is 127 years since that vehicle was the first one with a battery to go over 100 kilometers, nothing really happened. Now, Ford said last week that 30% of its sales by 2030 will be EVs. And a report from Exane BNP Paribas last week stated something on which I totally agree, even if I'm not a true EV fan. The report says, your next car may not be electric, but the one after could well be. The rise of EV now looks inevitable as technological, regulatory, and consumer stars finally align. Trends are shifting fast. True, and consensus may not be up with events. We believe EV penetration forecasts are 100% too low, and we expect that hybrid estimates are 50% too high. And I agree on both predictions. If we speak of EVs, we cannot forget Tesla. Tesla, what was Tesla 4 years ago? Well, Tesla 4 years ago was just starting production in July 2012 of an unknown flagship called the Model S that was going to become right now the only luxury sedan only powered by batteries. Tesla continues to be a serious money loser and a Wall Street star. And that is strange because you are normally a star in Wall Street when you make money, not when you lose money. But we can discuss Tesla numbers for days and not agree on anything. But I think there are a couple of figures that say something interesting about Tesla. The RenaultNissan line spent 4 billion euros on its EV program and took 6 years and 6 models to reach 350,000 global sales, a milestone that was reached last week. The first Nissan was the Leaf that went on sale in December 2010. Tesla just got 370,000 pre-orders for the Model 3, which has not yet a price nor a firm delivery date. But before launching that car, the hype was so high that they potentially sold more Model 3s than what RenaultNissan has been doing in 6 years. Number 5 is the fact that you can like or dislike shared mobility. I dislike it because I'm an individualist, so I would hate to sit down with someone else. But if the environment is something relevant to you, consider that a recent study by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology estimated that a fleet of shared autonomous taxis in New York City could properly serve the public with just 30% of the vehicles compared to what you have on the road today. You can easily imagine the massive reduction in traffic and in pollution if you cut the fleet of taxis going around the city by 70%. But at the same time, you have to consider what is the job impact of a thing like that, because right now, New York City has 13,000 taxis and 51,000 licensed taxi drivers. Number 6 should have come and has come, and is diesel. You cannot refrain to speak about diesel 1 year and 1 day from the explosion of Dieselgate. And in the last year, the world of diesel has not been the same and will probably be never the same. What is the future of diesel? I honestly don't know. And this is only my slide that continues for correction, because while we're having lunch, there were a couple of crucial reports that were issued today. In outlining the future of diesel, I will use words of a couple automakers. In March, in outlining the second century of BMW, one of by far the largest premium automaker in terms of sales, one of the most innovative, the new CEO, Harald Krüger, never used the word diesel in a 35-minute presentation. We recently reported that over summer, Renault had an internal meeting where it said that it expected diesel engine to disappear from most of its European cars, Renault, which is a leader in diesel. To add a solid fact, in August, diesel sales were below 50% of European demand, actually at 48.3%, the lowest level since 2011. Diesel was at 50.9% of European sales August last year. And year-to-date, diesel is below 50% of share at 49.9%, while last year, in the first 8 months, it was at 52.1%. These are figures from LMC Automotive. While we were having lunch, Transport and Environment, is probably the most serious environment group in Brussels, released its report on the Dieselgate a year later that put a couple of figures that are not a surprise for everyone that's been following this tricky issue in the last year, that 82% of the Euro 5 homologated cars emit 3 times NOx during normal driving compared to homologation data. And also, not very surprising, that 62% of the Euro 6 cars emit over 3 times NOx in real driving than in bench testing. The surprising thing is that the 4 brands that have the low NOx emissions in the Euro 6 are, in the order, Volkswagen, Seat, Skoda, and Audi. So it seems they've learned the lesson. If you look to the table of transfer environment from the other side, you have the third worst, which is Opel Vauxhall, the second worst, that is RenaultNissan, and the worst in terms of real NOx emission, that is unfortunately Fiat Chrysler, that also involves Suzuki because they supply diesel engines to Suzuki. Number 7 and last one. The autonomous car could come 2020, 2025, 2027. Then for last week projected that 20% of US car sales by 2030 will be autonomous vehicles, so it is coming. I'm sure the car will be ready before this legislation that will permit it to use it will be approved. Most autonomous cars will be electric, and the future of diesel is all but rosy. Which could be the suppliers affected most by this radical shift in powertrains? Schaeffler has 60% of its revenues at risk to the decline of internal combustion engine, followed by Plastic Omnium at 38% and Valeo at 31%. Figures again from BNP Exane Paribas. I was too long, I'm sorry, but I'm done.